Somewhere at the back of your shed, behind the bags of compost and the broken strimmer, there is a pile of old tools nobody has touched since a grandparent stopped gardening. Rusted, wooden handles gone gray, most of them useless. Some of that pile is scrap, some of it is not. 10 of these old tools carry real money, one of them well past $1,000. And one is the single most photographed object in gardening, sitting in almost every shed in the country, worth about 20. Age is not what decides it. Almost every one of these comes down to a stamp, somewhere on the metal or the clay, half a square inch of lettering that most people have never once looked for. Go out there with a torch and a wire brush you are not going to use yet. 10. The Planet Junior wheel hoe. Leaning against the back wall under a tarpaulin, there is a contraption with one big spoked wheel, a cast iron frame, and 2 long wooden handles sticking up like a plow. Bolted underneath is some arrangement of blades or tines. It looks agricultural rather than domestic, and it has been in the way for 30 years. Most people price it as scrap iron by weight. The name to look for is Planet Junior, made by S.L. Allen and Company of Philadelphia, and these were the backbone of American market gardening, from the 1880s through to the middle of the last century. One frame, and a whole system of attachments that bolted onto it. Seeders, cultivator teeth, sweeps, plow bodies, disc hillers. That modular design is why they matter now. Small-scale vegetable growing has come back, and a working wheel hoe does a job. No modern tool does better, so restorers and market gardeners hunt these down. Complete machines with their original attachments. Sell for real money, and the combined seeder and cultivator models are the ones people chase hardest. Your test tonight. Wipe the frame down and look for raised lettering cast directly into the iron, usually on the main beam or the wheel hub, giving the name and a model number. Then count the attachments. A bare frame is one thing. A frame that comes with its original box of blades is another entirely. And the loss I see constantly. Somebody keeps the frame because it looks decorative and takes the crate of odd-shaped blades to the tip, not realizing the blades were half the value. And the reason anyone would want the frame at all. Neen, the billhook, hanging on a nail by the door, a heavy curved blade on a short wooden handle, somewhere between a machete and a hatchet. The edge is dull, the blade is dark with old rust, and it has cut nothing in 20 years. Because a petrol hedge trimmer replaced it. Take it down and clean one small patch on the flat of the blade, near the handle, with fine oil and a rag. Nothing aggressive. British billhooks were made in dozens of regional patterns, each shaped for the hedging and coppicing traditions of a particular county, and the pattern is often stamped or named on the blade, alongside the maker. Sheffield produced a great many. Birmingham and the Black Country produced more. Firms operated for a century or longer, and their marks are documented. 2 groups want these. Tool collectors go after the pattern and the maker. Working hedge layers, who still lay hedges by hand and compete at it, want good old steel, because the modern equivalents are frequently worse. A well-marked billhook from a known maker sells for a great deal more than a hardware store one, and the layering competitions keep genuine demand under the whole category. Your test tonight. Clean that one patch, and look for a name, a town, or a small stamped symbol like a crown, a bell, or an animal. Then, look at the blade shape itself, because the outline is a fingerprint, and the loss. Somebody puts a grinder to the edge to make it useful again, takes off the stamped face, and turns a documented tool into an anonymous lump of steel in about 4 minutes. 8. The budding knife. In the drawer with the string and the bent nails, there is a small folding knife. Nobody has been able to place. Bone or horn scales gone the color of tea. One blade, and at the other end, something that is definitely not a blade. A flat brass or ivory-colored tongue, rounded at the tip, with no edge on it at all. That tongue is why the knife exists, and it is why almost nobody identifies these correctly. Budding and grafting knives were made. for propagating fruit trees and roses. The blade is ground on one side only, flat on the other, so it slices a clean, straight cut through green wood, rather than wandering the way a normal knife does. The spatula end lifts bark away from the wood, so a bud can be slipped underneath, without bruising anything. Sheffield produced these in quantity for the nursery trade, alongside German and French makers, and the good ones carry a maker's name on the tang. Grafting is a living craft, so working orchardists buy old ones, and collectors buy the rest. Your test tonight. Open it fully, and look down the length of the blade from the tip. A flat back and a single ground bevel means grafting knife. Then check the tang where the blade meets the pivot for a stamped name, and the loss on this one is almost universal. Somebody finds it, assumes the flat end is a broken blade, and either bins it or has a knife shop grind a proper edge onto both sides. 7. The wooden-handled digging spade, standing against the wall, where it has stood since the 90s. Long ash shaft worn smooth and gray, a D-shaped grip at the top, and a heavy blade under a coat of orange rust. It looks handmade. It looks like something from a museum. I need to slow you down here, because this is where nearly everyone in a cleared-out shed gets their hopes up. $15. Maybe $25 if the handle is sound. Millions of these were made across the 20th century, and here is the awkward part. They were built so well that almost all of them survived. Quality of manufacture produced abundance rather than scarcity, and abundance sets the price. There is no shortage of solid old spades anywhere in the English-speaking world. While we are here, let me correct the thing that causes more damage than any other belief in this subject. Rust is not evidence of age, and it is not proof of anything. A spade left in a damp shed for 8 years looks exactly like one left for 80. What rust actually does is eat pitting into the steel, and deep pitting on a stamped area destroys the only part that identifies a tool. The instinct is then to attack it. Wire wheel on an angle grinder. Aggressive, abrasive, back to bright metal. That removes the surface, the stamp, and any patina at once, and a collector will pay less for a shined-up tool than for the same one left dirty. Your test tonight? On this spade and everything else in the pile. Look at the shoulder, where the blade meets the socket. Clean one small area with oil on a rag and nothing else, and read what is there before deciding anything. Before the top 5, a pattern is worth naming because it explains why the pile is worth sorting at all. The valuable tools in a shed are almost never the ones that wore out. They are the ones that stopped being needed. Spades and forks were used until they broke and then replaced, endlessly, which is why they are everywhere. But when a job disappears, when nobody forces rhubarb anymore, when nobody grafts their own fruit trees, when a machine takes over the hedge, the tools for that job stop being made, and the survivors stop being replaced. Supply freezes at whatever happened to be in sheds on the day the practice ended. Obsolescence is what creates scarcity here. Wear and tear does not. 6. The brass sprayer. Somewhere on a high shelf, there is a cylinder of tarnished brass, with a plunger at one end and a fine nozzle at the other, roughly the size of a bicycle pump, or a larger version with a copper tank and a shoulder strap, green with verdigris. Everything about these was made in metal, because plastic did not exist yet. Solid brass barrels, copper tanks, leather pump washers, and they were built to be rebuilt, rather than thrown away. They sell now largely as objects. Polished brass and copper of this kind goes into kitchens and interiors, and dealers buy them faster than gardeners do. Your test tonight. Look for a maker's plate or stamped lettering on the tank shoulder, and check whether the original nozzle and lance are still with it, because those go missing first and matter more than the tank. And a serious word before you handle any of them. Many of these sprayed lead arsenate and similar compounds through the first half of the last century, and residue survives inside the tank. Wear gloves, keep it out of the kitchen, and do not let a child play with one. 5. The glass cloche. Under the bench, half full of spiders, a heavy dome of glass with a knob on top. Cloudy, greenish, thick at the base. Somebody has probably been using it as a paperweight for a decade. Weight is the first thing to notice. An original belle cloche is genuinely heavy. The glass is uneven, and the color is not clear white, but a faint green or gray from the iron in the sand. Kitchen gardeners across France and England used thousands of them to bring salad crops on early, and glass houses and plastic tunnels put an end to that. Real examples sell well, and antique glass dealers keep them in stock, rather than gardeners. Reproduction is the problem here, and it is a large one. Modern decorative cloches are made by the container load and sold through home and garden shops, and after a few years outdoors, they look convincingly old. Your test tonight, and it is the Pontil mark. Turn the cloche over and feel the center of the underside. Hand-blown glass was snapped off an iron rod, leaving a rough scar, sometimes a raised lump, sometimes a shallow ring. Modern molded glass has a smooth, flat base, and often a faint mold seam running up the side. Then look through the wall of it. Original glass carries small bubbles, ripples, and thickness variation. A reproduction is uniform. And the loss. These get stacked on top of each other in a shed clearance. One cracks under the weight, and the pile becomes a bin bag of broken glass in about 10 seconds. 4. The push mower. Behind everything else, a real mower. 2 wheels, a cylinder of curved blades, a wooden roller across the back, handles bolted on with square nuts. The grass box is long gone. Somebody has been meaning to take it to the tip since roughly 1998. Names to look for are cast or riveted onto the frame. Ransoms of Ipswich, Atco, Qualcast, Shanks, and on the American side, Coldwell and Pennsylvania Lawnmower Works. Ransoms built the first commercially successful lawnmower under license in the 1830s, which puts these at the very beginning of an entire industry. There is an organized restoration scene behind them. Clubs, rallies, people who rebuild and run these machines, and prices for early or unusual models that surprise anyone treating one as scrap. Your test tonight. Look for a brass or cast plate on the frame or the handle bracket, carrying a name and often a patent number. Then check whether the wooden roller and the original handles are still there, since those rot and snap first, and a complete machine is worth several times a stripped one. 3. The rhubarb forcer. A tall bell of terracotta, 2 feet or more, with a small lid on top like a chimney cap. If you have one, it is probably standing in a corner with a dead plant in it. Real ones sell for hundreds, and the good tall examples pass 1,000. The value sits in a stamp pressed into the clay near the base. John Matthews of the Royal Pottery at Weston-super-Mare, William Thomas and Company of Wellington in Somerset, Sankey of Bulwell. Your test. Find the stamp, then check whether the lid is original. Dealers note constantly that old forcers turn up lacking them, and a missing lid takes a serious bite out of the price. 2. The Hawes watering can. Somewhere in that shed is a watering can, with an unusually long spout, and a handle arrangement that looks overbuilt. One handle over the top, another at the back, so it can be carried in one hand and tipped with the other. The proportions are the giveaway. Hawes cans are longer and lower than they need to be, because John Hawes patented the design in the 1880s, specifically so a full can would balance in the hand, instead of dragging the shoulder down. Everything about the shape follows from that one idea. Look at the business end. The rose, the perforated head that breaks the flow, is brass, and it attaches with a threaded brass collar, rather than being pressed on. Better cans came with more than one rose, coarse and fine, and the fine one is often oval rather than round, so it can be turned face up to water seedlings from underneath. Original brass-rosed cans in sound condition run into the hundreds, and the early copper and galvanized bodies, with the maker's name stamped near the handle, are the ones dealers watch for. Gardeners still buy the modern ones, which keeps the name alive, and the old ones desirable. Your test tonight: turn the rows over, and look for lettering on the collar or the face, then look along the body seam near the top handle for a stamped name or a patent line. And the loss. The rose is a separate brass part on a threaded fitting, so it gets unscrewed, put on a shelf, and lost. A Hawes can, without its original rose, is worth a fraction of the same can complete, and that small, perforated disc is doing most of the work. 1. And it is standing right there in the corner, in almost every shed in the country. The galvanized watering can, gray metal gone soft and chalky with age, a plain round rose, a simple handle. It is the most photographed object in gardening. It is on the cover of every gardening magazine, in the background of every potting shed picture, propped beside a pair of boots, in 100,000 photographs. $20, maybe $30 if it does not leak. Millions were made. They were made from a metal that resists rust by design, and they all survived. The look everyone associates with old gardening is precisely the look of the most common object in it, which is where these two cans meet, and where every item tonight lands. 2 watering cans, same corner of the same shed, same rough shape, same age, both dented, both dull. One is worth $20, and one is worth several hundred, and the entire difference is a few words stamped into a brass collar the size of a coin. Not the rust, not the age, not how handmade it looks. So here is the last job, and it takes an hour with a torch and a rag with oil on it. Go through that pile one tool at a time and find the flattest, cleanest piece of metal or clay on each one. The shoulder of a spade, the face of a blade, the base of a pot, the collar of a rose. Wipe that one spot gently and read what is there. Because a shed does not hide value under dirt. It hides it in lettering half an inch across that nobody has bothered to look at in 60 years. Everything worth money tonight was filthy, obsolete, and standing next to something identical that was worth nothing. If this made you want to go out there with a torch, do me one small thing and like the video. It tells me to keep making these. And if you are not subscribed, that is where the next one lives. Then tell me down in the comments. What is the oldest tool in your shed? And whose was it before yours? I read every single one. Last thing, and I mean it. Do not put a wire wheel to anything this weekend. Read the stamp first, because once it is gone, you cannot get it back.